everyone. Today I'll be drawing Mercury. Actually, I'll be revamping Mercury. You saw my older drawing there, and that one I did back in 2015. So here I am, 5 years later. I figured I might as well try redrawing it, see if I can get a cooler looking picture out. Yeah, so let's get started. So I'm just going to start off with the base drawing here. I'm still going to do the billowing skirt effect, but hopefully with a tad more detail on it. Now, the reason I did the billowing skirt in the first version, the 2015 version, was because Mercury is a liquid metal. It's actually the only metal which is a liquid at room temperature. Gallium comes very close. It can melt. Actually, if you put some gallium in your hand, it'll actually melt with your body heat, but it's still solid at room temperature, so it's not a liquid. Yeah, but the reason I did a billowing skirt was to kind of make it look like a ripple or something like that, since it is a liquid. So we'll get started on the base here. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, so whenever you're drawing a base or something like that, you always want to start out with like simpler shapes and things like that. It doesn't matter if it's rough. For this one, you see I used a lot of circles, a lot of rectangles, things like that. That's just to get the body positioning and everything like that. And I've drawn it on very roughly with just basic, with just a very light pencil strokes. And that's so that it, when I cover it over with the more detailed stuff, I'm able to visually pick out what I have as the base and what I have as the detailed picture. Now, some people, they prefer to use things like different colored pencils and stuff like that. So some people, they'll use a blue pencil for the base and then use a gray pencil like I have for the top layer. But I tried using blue pencil before and it just wasn't working for me, so I thought, hey, why not just draw lighter? Alright. So you'll see later on that now Mercury is known as one of the ancient elements, and that's because it was discovered by multiple different people in the days before written language. So, or at least, yeah, in the days before written language. So no one really knows who discovered it first and when it was discovered. So it's just called an ancient metal. But in the alchemy days, alchemy is kind of like the first version of chemistry. This was the symbol for Mercury, and actually this is still the symbol for the planet Mercury, where it's like a little circle with the cross coming off the bottom of it, and then the two little horns at the top. So you can see here with her hair bow, I've made it into the horns. Her head will represent the circle here, and then I'm going to have a cross design on her dress that will represent this symbol here. I've also given her a bit of a fishtail, as because it's also Mercury is considered a heavy metal, and sometimes you get fish such as tuna and other things like that. They will build up heavy metals in their system, and that can be passed on to humans. which isn't a good thing since it's also a toxic metal. It's a lot of different things, but I figured I'd give it that little aquatic look, whereas my first one was more just a girl with a billowy dress. I'm going to give her a little bit more of a kind of half mermaid, half human, because she still has legs, but she kind of has a big old fish tail as well. Yeah, so I give her a bit more of an aquatic look. But yeah, this is my base done. So I'll just move on to the detailing here, and we'll move on to inking from there. Okay, so we're moving on to the detailing here, and that's probably the longest part of drawing, and that's because you usually have to come up with the design and everything like that. So there's a lot more thinking required when you're inking. It's just kind of a basic process. You're just tracing everything over again. And coloring, it can be time consuming, but more just because you have bigger areas to cover rather than drawing a little line. So here we go. For these sorts of characters, for those of you who haven't seen my art before, I like to draw inanimate objects, or more like materials, rocks, mostly the periodic table elements, so that's why I'm revamping these fellas here. And yeah, for my metals, especially the toxic ones, I usually like to give them horns or something like that, or pointy teeth, make them look like they're a little more toxic, and stuff that we won't get like stuff you don't want to get on your skin and things like that. So yeah, you'll see along here, we'll go along and I'll show you my more detailed work. Here we go. Now Mercury, you may be wondering this, you think it would have like an atomic symbol, that's the two letters here that I've drawn. You may think it'd have an atomic symbol such as like MR or MY or something like that, or even MC. But that's not the case. As you can see, it's HG, which reminds me of my favorite joke, my favorite chemical joke, is that HG, a hug is just a hug without you, and a hug without you is just toxic. So there you go, that's James's joke of the day. Anyway, back to the point. So HG, back in the day, Mercury used to be called Quicksilver because of its silvery luster and because it moved a lot quicker than silver, being a liquid. But before that, in the more ancient days, it used to be called Hydrargyrum, which is where you get the HG from. So, yeah, Hydrargyrum. Yeah, Hydrargyrum, which was basically water and metal or something like that. I can't quite remember the etymology of it, but yeah, it was basically referencing the physical properties of mercury in the lame, and then they condensed it down. Okay, so we're ready to move on to inking now. So you can see I have a few different pens that I'm going to use. Actually, these two are the same, but one's a bit older than the other and gives a wider line since it's more worn out, and I use that for rougher work. And then this one is used for lettering, and that's what I'm going to use for mercury, like thick lines, lettering, stuff like that. So that's what I'm going to use for the title here. I also have this fine pen that I'm going to use at one point. This is called a crow quill, and that's for straight lines, fine lines, things like that. Alright. And then the ink I'm using, this is just a regular black ink that I've watered down a little bit. It's 10 parts ink to 1 part water. And yeah, the water just helps it flow a little better, because when I first bought this ink, I noticed it was clogging up my pens quite a bit, and I thought, better water this down, otherwise it's going to be a pain to clean my pens every single time. So yeah, that's so water down your inks if you get the chance. Not too much though, otherwise you won't get quite as good black colors. Now this is something you need to watch out for when you're using liquid inks. You see I put my hand into the line there and made a little bit of a streak mark. That's okay though. There's no such things as mistakes. There's only happy accidents. And so, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna quickly do that, give it a little bit of an effect there. Yeah, it looks okay. Now our feet here, these aren't hooves, these aren't hooves. They're just little tiny chibi feet. So now, those of you who haven't heard of chibis, those are the Japanese art style of drawing people with like really big heads and like really tiny little bodies. And usually their feet can be like little kind of pegs almost, without being a fully formed foot. Now if I was drawing like a more, this is kind of humanoid, but if I was drawing something more human, like a human character, I would give them actual feet, but on this one, since it's a metal in real life, I figured why not give it a little cute little chibi feet. Okay, so we're just going to let this dry. There's some thick ink right here. It came out a little more globby than I wanted, but you know what, that's okay. Yeah, then we'll erase the underlying pencil here, and we'll get into the color, grayscale, things like that. Okay, so it's time to erase the base pencil and just leave the ink nice and pristine, or as pristine as possible. Alrighty, so we're ready to start our coloring and filling this in, making it a little more lively. So for this bit here, this is just going to be pure black. I'll use a brush on that bit. Her dress is going to be red, and that's because Mercury, one of the main deposits of mercury in nature is in a mineral called cinnabar, which is a mercury sulfur mineral, HGS. It's a very pretty stone actually, a very nice vivid red color. A dye called vermilion used to be made by grinding that up and mixing it in with other dye bases. Unfortunately, it's a deadly neurotoxin as well, so there's that. But it's very pretty. Look it up if you ever get the chance. Yeah, looks very nice. It's red with some gray streaks through it. It's kind of like lapis lazuli, except red instead of blue. Anyway, we'll get started. The rest of her is going to be a mix of grays, and her hair will be more of a silvery luster. this is the completed drawing of Mercury. I'll show you a final pic once this ink drop shadow has dried. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. Maybe see you next time. I might do another one of these if this turns out to be popular. Alright, talk to you guys later.